Druthers is Canada's largest, most loved, independent, people-powered newspaper. Now with over 8.5 million copies printed and distributed coast to coast by concerned Canadians like you. Please, donate, subscribe, volunteer, get involved. Together we can save this country. If you stand for freedom, go to www.druthers.net.
What's going on, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to our 22nd episode of Alberta Radio Show. I'm your host, Jay LaFosse. So today, been going cruising the news wire and seeing everybody propping up some nonsense today. Well, let's start with Wab Canoe, right? Man, this guy's hilarious. So Wabby. I'm just going to say this. This guy's been charged multiple times for, assault on women. He beat up a taxi driver. He used the Gladue report to have his charges stayed. And this is a problem. This is something I don't agree with, where First Nations use the Gladue report to get away with their crimes. And it's all historical guilt shaming. And this has to stop. If someone's going to be charged in Canada for something, we shouldn't be having special privileges just because of your ethnicity or what happened in the past. This is absolutely absurd. But nevertheless, I'm going to show you folks a video where Wab Canoe was charged for DUI, for drinking and driving, and then he did a video mocking it, right? Like this is the attitude and professionalism we have from our premiers here in Canada. So here we're going to start with that.
Up with the police coming straight from the underground. A young native got it bad cause I'm brown and not the other color, so police think I belong with my brothers locked up in the clink. But life ain't all rosy when you're locked up in Stony. Dinner is hot dogs, dessert is bologna. Get off me, you don't know me, I'm allergic to that, homie. I'm the only one in here who doesn't look like Todd Domi. The only reason I can think of why they bring me in is cause I'm DWI, driving while Indian. Or could there be another cause for interference? I mean, other than my aboriginal appearance.
Wabby. I guess he's want to be a Wabster. I don't know, wankster. Anyways, I just think it's hilarious. Now, Wab Canoe did have a music career, or attempted to have a music career prior to being the premier of Alberta, or of Manitoba, sorry. And and his affiliations with some certain individuals is really, people don't know about this, right? Like they don't know who Wab Canoe really is and what he's all about. Now, let's forget about his past for a second and look at his professionalism and ethics of today in a legislative assembly. This is pretty interesting.
Now, the premier did say that he, I asked the premier numerous times to please be respectful while I ask a question from Manitobans. This is unbecoming of the premier. It is unfortunate. I'm just asking to be respectful. I'm asking questions.
Ask a question, I'll answer.
And this is the behavior we're getting from him. It's unfortunate. So the premier knows he can do it and pass it. So the simple question is, will the premier stop laughing?
No. Nobody else?
No. I'm asking about the budget bill. And the answer is no.
So this is the official leader, the leader of the official opposition in Manitoba at the Winnipeg Legislative Assembly, asking, real questions about the budget bill. And Wab Canoe, this is the attitude he has in government. Now, when we have a leader like this, don't you think that we should have that person either, in my opinion, I should just remove the guy. You're not running a functional government. You're not taking things seriously. You're not respecting other members of Legislative Assembly, especially when they're speaking on behalf of the constituents of Manitoba. It's just complete mockery of the system. And for me, the system's a mockery of it in itself, period, right? So that's where I fully support the endeavor for Alberta to seek her independence, just because we have a dysfunctional government right across the board. And what's really concerning is the fact that we have a population right now, like our population, there's a percentage of it that's really suffering from some type of Stockholm syndrome behavior, where on one hand, in 2014, 2015, under the Trudeau government, we've had Canadians go out and protest the Me Too movement, the Black Lives Matters movement, anti-suicide campaigns, all these things, right? And then today, we have the same people who were pushing these campaigns who were propping up a wife beater, propping up politicians who gave a standing ovation to a Nazi, propping up sexualization ideologies where, pride parades where you have individuals walking naked in a pride parade, flaunting their junks at little kids. And then you have the radical side of it, putting pornography in schools. And then these people are telling parents that they don't have a right, and they don't have a right to say anything. Like, you see where I'm getting at with this? And then on top of that, with the experimental jabs and vaccines. So I really think that our population is very sick. I think that we have a huge problem in mental health. And I also believe that our government has basically weaponized these individuals and weaponized their voice against the majority of the collective. So here in Alberta, what's happening is there's a majority of people who want to be out of Canada. We want something new. And the media will propagate a lie. The left will propagate a lie. People like, Luke Kasich, NDP, all these guys. And the reason why they're doing this is because they're scared. They know that it's the majority. So they are out, because if it wasn't the majority, they wouldn't be hammering down on this and making a big deal about it the way they are right now. So you just look at what the narrative is with mainstream media, with these activist groups, the NDP, especially the NDP. NDP is an activist party now. They don't stand up for their constituents at all equally. So here's an example. I live in Naheed Nenshie's riding. Okay. He's never in our riding, ever. He doesn't engage with our people here, ever. He's too busy propping up Millwoods. But it goes to show that there is not fair representation. So let's say I have an actual valid issue and I have to go to Nenshie for it, he will not represent me. He will not do his job as an elected MLA and leader of the NDP to represent his constituency at all. So then, right there just tells me that we have a broken system, bad leadership, and the NDP with all the rhetoric and activism and chasing kids with drag queens and stuff. It's unbelievable. But furthermore, these folks are so hell-bent on keeping Canada together. And the oxymoron of all this is in Edmonton alone, okay, the capital of Alberta, we have 4,000 homeless. This year, we've amputated 300 homeless individuals who suffered the elements of the cold in the winter from frostbite and had to be amputated. We have senior citizens who are homeless on the streets, who had both limbs amputated and put into a wheelchair and thrown right back onto the streets, not given any kind of emergency housing to recover, not any help at all. So when I hear this rhetoric where, we want to keep Canada together, well, how can you keep Canada together if you don't care about your citizens? And then when you look at the dynamics of what they're promoting immigration, mass immigration, TFWs, give our jobs away to everybody else, and it's always for a foreigner. And they pander to foreign votes, right? So we have a problem with this right now with these folks because they do not care about Canadians. And I've argued with the mayor of Edmonton and two city councillors, Noble and Paquette, for the last 14 days about the issue that's going on in our streets here in Edmonton about the 4,000 homeless Canadians. Okay, so nevertheless, it's Albertans, but they want to prop up Canada and Canadians are so united. You have people dying in the streets. We expect to have 700 more Albertans die of overdoses this year because the Edmonton government, the city council and mayor refuse to actually utilize the funds that the province gave them to fix the problem. Now, the city of Edmonton received about $400 million in funding to help address the issue. But guess what? Only 5 to 6% of those funds went to help the issue, and the rest went to salaries. So imagine $400 million given by the province of Alberta to organizations here in Edmonton to curb homelessness, to create housing, to do everything necessary to get people off the street, get them into treatment, give them the help they need, get them reintegrated into society, and help them. But nope, it goes to board of directors, it goes to these organizations, non-for-profits, who are in the business of poverty pimp industry, and they're paying themselves salaries, $100,000 plus a year, right? $100,000 each of them. This is a repeat of the Lethbridge incident, where they shut down a safe injection site in Lethbridge because, again, $7.9 million went to funding, and 90% of that money was used for salaries. This is happening right across the country with these folks. It's the same thing in Ontario. We have Sudbury, Ontario, where we have an organization called the Go Give Project. They received about $3.4 million over the course of the last few years since 2020, and only 5% went to help the people that are in those tents. The rest of it went to salaries, and there's $300 and some odd thousand unaccounted for. That's just screaming, what did you do with it? So when we look at the fiscal analysis of all the financials we've got for all these organizations, if you look in the other section, they're deferring money to other expenses that are not accounted for. So more money is being put somewhere, not helping anybody. So 4,000 people homeless in our capital. Calgary has about 5,000. So just between two cities alone in Alberta, which not one politician is doing anything about, not one, not the UCP, not the NDP, not the provincial, or not the municipal governments, nobody's doing anything. I know that the Premier and the UCP caucus have delegated money to the municipalities to curb this issue, but where's the oversight? Where's the accountability? Why isn't the province intervening and saying, hey, whoa, where's the money going? You're not fixing the problem, and we still have a high rate of overdose deaths. We still have we have the highest rate of amputations in Canada here in Edmonton. So why isn't the province stepping in to address this? And in Edmonton alone, I mean, there's a dynamic with this. So on one hand, these people are preaching, we want Canada to stay together, but they have a mass infill being built, developments. So what they're doing is they're strong arming homeowners. This is the city of Edmonton. Strong arming homeowners by running a inspector. City inspector goes in and says, oh, well, you got asbestos around your house, and boom, they start slapping all these things and fines and making it really hard to the homeowners. So the homeowners are forced to sell. And those homeowners who don't want to sell, well, then the next thing you know, either a house next to them is being burnt down and they get smoke damage and they're forced to sell. Like, this is happening, or their house gets burnt, like it's arson. So this is all a sham by the Liberal government, because what they're doing is they're evicting Canadians, their own citizens, forcing them into tents. This is happening everywhere across the country. And I find it quite hypocritical that we want to keep Canada together, but we can't help our own citizens. But you'll house a homeless refugee from another country as a priority, invest $82,000 a year for that individual, and give peanuts to our own citizens. Now, the other thing is the chiefs of First Nations. Where are you about your First Nations people living on the streets that are being involved in crime, overdoses, drugs, human trafficking, violence, right? You're not helping them either. So it's such an oxymoron to hear leaders say they care about their country so much and care about their people so much. They'll historically guilt shame us for a whole bunch of different reasons. But yet when it comes down to it, we got all these people living on the streets, and it's not foreigners. They're all Canadians and First Nations. So I just find that really interesting, that this is happening. It's such a hypocritical thing. And to think that also, with the programs and services, it's also interesting that a refugee or a newcomer will come into Canada and get all this help, okay? Get all these programs and services and money and startups for an apartment. And you watch that most of these newcomers are driving brand new cars, right? Own brand new franchises. They have our jobs. They're not even hiring Canadians, right? I mean, I was told right from somebody from Pakistan or from India one day. I went, dropped off. We're not hiring whites. Happened to my wife with an agent. We're not hiring whites. This is what they're saying to us. But there's no oversight. There's nothing that's policing this situation. And in fact, we're seeing politicians pander to these folks for votes because they know that the collective is fed up and Canadians stop voting. So an example is here in Edmonton when we did the municipal election. Jesse Freag pushed out, this is your representation. These are how many people voted. And this is a percentage of the voter base that elected these individuals into city council. So when you see that, less than 15%, 11% of the vote goes to a politician, there's a big problem. There's a big problem there. So people are not coming out. So they pander to newcomers to get the vote. And that's how we're seeing this manipulation of our electorates, of our political system, municipal, everywhere. It's just unbelievable that we will sit there and say, we want to be part of Canada and we want to remain part of Canada, Canada, but you're pandering to foreigners first, prioritizing foreign refugees first, prioritizing everything for foreigners and nothing for Canadians. Nothing, absolutely nothing. And then they what they do is they use media releases like for Tim Hortons. Oh, we're going to start hiring Canadians again. Really? No, Dunkin' Donuts is going to come in here and obliterate Tim Hortons because Tim Hortons has turned into this. I'll show you.
Yes. Would you like some panchagavya in your coffee, sir?
What's that?
Milk, yogurt, liquefied cow manure, bovine urine, and butter.
Right? Now, I pulled a video of what Tim Hortons was previously.
That's 20 minutes. Better make a fresh pot.
If a pot of Tim Hortons coffee can't be served in 20 minutes, it can't be served at all.
We'll never get through in this blizzard.
At Tim Hortons, always fresh means always fresh.
He's here!
No wonder our coffee is so popular.
Wow, Pied Piper and his plow.
Didn't want any of that wonderful coffee to go to waste.
Always got time for Tim Hortons.
Right. Just saying. And then we go on with the Federalists, the Federalist MPs. Now, yesterday I took down a post because I called out MP Michelle Ferreri from the Conservatives, who I'm starting to realize that the federal Conservative base are libcons. Not all of them, but we have libcon ex-MPs, libcon MPs. It's just, one thing on one side of the mouth, the other on the other side. My issue with the federal government is the fact that under Trudeau, they appointed Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, whose family are known war criminals. They're Nazis. And nobody did nothing about this, and I don't care. What she's done with Ukraine and prioritized Ukraine over Canadians, and every time that something happens in Ukraine, we're sending billions of our dollars, but yet our people are faced with the harsh elements of homelessness, being forced into tents, inflation through the roof, the price is going up for food, the price is going up for gas. I mean, everything is going up, and this is a result of our government, just basically draining the Canadian purse and handing it to other countries, like Ukraine. And don't get me wrong, I don't like war. Okay, I don't support war at all. But since when does Canada fund a war against a superpower? It's different if we're doing humanitarian aid, but this is all military. We're providing military tools to fight a war against Russia. And which blows my mind is I'm surprised Russia hasn't attacked Canada yet with any missiles or anything, because we're funding that war, right? Like, it's unbelievable. So again, when you're draining the purse of the Canadian taxpayer and it's going everywhere else, like this is what's happening in our country. But anyways, what I was getting at is I posted a video last year where a Canadian in Ottawa, an older lady, ran into Chrystia Freeland, and Chrystia Freeland was sitting on a bench, and the lady's like, "Are you part of WEF? Are you part of the World Economic Forum? Are you a globalist?" Just outing her, because that's what these MPs are. They're globalists. And Michelle Ferreri comes on my post again, and I consider her a libcon sellout. She comes on my post and starts, "Oh, that's not cool. We shouldn't be doing this to politicians." And well, I'm sorry, when you sell out our country and cause it to go into a mass recession, and ruin people's lives. Like myself, I lost everything, right? Because of the Liberals. But hey, whatever, right? That's okay. We can just lose our shirt and lose everything that we've worked hard for, our company, our homes, everything, and then end up on the street. But that's okay for these MPs. They don't give a shit about Canadians. They'll prop up their friends like Chrystia Freeland, the little Nazi. So I commend anybody who confronts politicians in the public, because look, you were a public servant. You didn't uphold your obligation to do what was right for Canadians, and you shot us right to the ground. You deserve being confronted. Now, I don't believe in hurting and promoting violence, but have your say and just keep your distance. But to exercise violence, that's where I don't agree with. But if you're going to call a politician a Nazi, all these horrible insults, whatever, I don't care, but as long as you don't cross the line. And that's what happened this weekend. Out of one of her book show, she's promoting this book again, and she got confronted by somebody. And again, there you have Michelle Ferrari. Oh my God, this shouldn't happen. And no. These are libcons protecting libcons, right? And so I have no respect for any politician that goes after a Canadian for speaking up for they have every right to, for the damage created by these politicians that have sunk Canada to the ground. And I'll play you the video.
Thousands murdered because of you. How many children have you orphaned? You monster. You Zionist Nazi dog. And I see you up there, Jesse. You're disgusting. You're disgusting. You're a monster. What do you have to say for yourself, you animal? You disgusting animal. You're a fucking Nazi, bitch of Freeland. You're the butcher of Gaza. Those souls will haunt you for the rest of your life. You animal. And you go around with a book deal? You making money off of genocide? You disgusting dog. You disgusting animal. Who do you think you are? Robbing people of their money, of taxpayer money, to fund Nazis. You're disgusting. They should haunt you for the rest of your life. You disgusting animal. Zionist dog. Yeah, all right.
And I endorse that message 100%, because any politician that's been stealing Canadian funds to fund wars in other countries, okay, and then use it as some type of ruse and free this and free that and da-da-da. No. What you're doing to Canada is absolutely genocide. I'll tell you why. One, you're forcing Canadians to live on the streets, amputating them, and they're dying and they're using this ruse of harm reduction. So harm reduction is a big pharma platform that's been endorsed by the Sackler family. People don't realize how it started. Also, I'll give you a little rundown of how harm reduction was introduced into Canada. One, Sackler got hit hard in the U.S. for the oxy pharmacies and the pill farms and stuff. Remember that? Now, they were ordered to pay $8 billion to the American people for the harm they caused with the opiates, right? The painkillers, they call it. Now, when that happened, a lot of stuff had to get shut down by the Sackler and for all their subsidiaries that were pushing out these pills. And in Canada, what we were doing is our doctors were mass prescribing OxyContin and Percocets and what was it, hydromorphine, a whole bunch of different types of hard drugs to our collective. And they were using that as a safe, harm reduction. So Sackler and his friends have this big pharma meeting in BC, and Trudeau and the Liberals and NDP were all there, and they started running these pilot programs into conservative base ridings. Okay, so what I've done is I've analyzed all the cities hit hard by harm reduction caused by the Liberals and NDP, and I correlated that most of these cities were once conservative strongholds or conservative leaning voters. And what they did is they flooded these cities, moving people around. Okay, so first they started moving the homeless around across the country from city to city to city. We used to call it the Tent City Circus Show. In Ontario, what they were doing is they were moving people from Thunder Bay to Sudbury, then to Peterborough, and it was just moving people around. Human trafficking is what I call it. And then with that brought addictions, tent cities. And they flooded these cities with millions and millions of needles. So imagine a city with a population of, let's say, 170,000 people getting doled 2 million needles a day, or 2 million needles a year, pumped right in. And whether they're using or not, I mean, they're just pumping the needles and they're all over the place. People are getting mad. Businesses are getting upset. And then you have all these people coming in from other cities, setting up tent cities, and they're drug dens. People are dying in the tent cities, overdoses. I mean, overdoses were shooting through the roof. And we still have cities that are doing that. So now what we've done is we've analyzed these cities that are hard hit from opiates and all this stuff, right? And they're liberal NDP cities only. That's it. Edmonton is a prime example. Edmonton, when you look at Alberta and you look at all the ridings in Alberta, okay, every constituency area or association, you'll see that we have a strong conservative base, except for Edmonton and Calgary. Now, when you look at the dynamics of both cities, major drugs, major crime, major homelessness, major deaths, it's just an onslaught, and they're flooding the cities with all these new people. So, Farkas in Calgary is propping up and he said, oh, look, we got all these new people and we're almost at 2 million people. Yeah, what was the population of Calgary just 5 years ago? The same thing with Edmonton. We've had an influx of 600,000 new residents in a small period of time. It stressed the crap out of the social programs in our system here in Edmonton. And who's behind it? Well, the Liberals, Mayor Sohi, Knack, all these cronies. Right? They all go run off to the World Economic Forum on the taxpayers' dime and go meet up with China and stuff. And that's what Andrew Dack did, right? Same thing with Sohi. And Sohi, okay, here's even more kicker. Sohi was in jail for 18 months in India before he came to Canada, and he was in jail for being listed as a terrorist. So what are we doing? When you look at all these foreigners and all these MPs and MLAs and the people that are in the federal government. I mean, there's so much controversy about their background and associations with terrorist groups. It's unbelievable. I mean, your public sector minister or your public safety minister, Gary Anasage, Tamil Tiger, right? And here he is trying to push Bill C-22 and take our guns away and come after us and spy on us. And this is typical terrorist crap, right? But that's the Canada you want to keep together. That's unbelievable, man. It blows my mind at the lunacy. So here I'm gonna play some videos from other content creators about this, what's going on, because I like to watch other content creators that I follow. So.
Ladies and gentlemen, behold the curious canonization of Wab Kinew.
At the moment, there's a lack of clarity on that. And you've talked a lot about...
Sorry, I'd like to respond. So I think we know that is not correct, a lot of what you just said there, Premier Smith.
A premier with a past of conviction for assaulting a taxi driver with punches and racial slurs, impaired driving, stayed domestic assault allegations of throwing his partner and dragging her by the hair, misogynistic rap lyrics calling women bitches and whores, plus crude homophobic tweets. He's apologized and turned things around, redemption acknowledged. Yet the left celebrates him as a moral hero for scolding Alberta Premier Smith at the Western Premiers Conference, interrupting to lecture on Indigenous consultation and demand she pause any referendum talk for unity. Meanwhile, he's been caught barking like a dog at his own Conservative opposition leader during legislative committee meetings. The same crowd that would demand a Conservative's career over for far less now airbrushes Kinew's record because he targeted the right premier. Hypocrisy this blatant exposes their selective standards, past violence, misogyny, and even childish heckling forgiven when identity and politics align. True character, partisan applause.
A BC First Nation group just formally threatened BC Hydro, the Island Highway, marine terminals, and Seymour Narrows. For those who don't know what Seymour Narrows is, that's a passage, a single passage for a cruise corridor north of Vancouver. That civil disobedience is coming if the province doesn't pause a treaty. They're not calling it a peaceful protest. They're literally telling you this is civil disobedience. They want to disrupt as much as humanly possible so they get their way. They said they want to avoid any sort of social disruption, blockades, things of that nature, but they just feel like they're continuously disrespected and ignored. So they're potentially going to be breaking the law. Why are they doing this? Because of the ridiculous land grabs that are happening throughout Canada, particularly in BC. They feel like this is theirs, and it shouldn't be going to another tribe. This is modern day tribal warfare between the two of them. The province and our country have allowed these things to flourish and to happen. Private property and public property is being claimed as Indigenous land. But here's the crazy part. In 2022, the government enacted the Emergencies Act, and they did it illegally. This was ruled several times by several courts. The Emergencies Act is no longer a national security tool. It's a political one. And when it's politically inconvenient, the government, they won't use it. The government uses it when protesters are inconvenient. And in this case, this isn't even a protest. It is flat out a threat of civil disobedience.
And, and this is a common occurrence. So I'm just going to say this. I was part of the blockade in Tyendinaga when we blocked off the trains for Whitsun. And this was in retaliation when the RCMP dragged elders and women by the hair at 3 in the middle of winter. And, it's just a treatment of the RCMP, which is, we all know what the RCMP is all about. They're Canada's Gestapos. So at that point, when we blockaded it, we did it for just reason. A lot of folks in the West didn't like what we did, and a lot of folks didn't understand. But that was the main reason as to why we shut down the train. So when you have activism for a cause that's just, that's one thing. But then when you have activism for a cause that's not just, and it's based on a lie, and it's continuous guilt shaming and continuous threats to shut down infrastructure or just cause a disturbance, whatever. This needs to be addressed, because we're getting into this this area with the residential schools, because I'm tracking this, and zero bodies, right? So my thing is, I'm with folks who just want the proof, and to furthermore is the fact that what we need something in place to stop this land grab. We have the UN, the Legislative Assembly in British Columbia under EB is a complete moron, and then you have all these folks that are getting evicted and, losing their investment because their investment into their property becomes nil. Now, I know that the federal conservatives ran a motion in the House of Commons, which was defeated by Mark Carney. And Mark Carney, again, this guy here is he's not for Canada. And I want to remind viewers that look at Brexit, because Mark Carney preached about this just recently, about how Brexit did this and how they were whatever, and he was laughing about it more or less. He's the reason why that happened, and he got fired and booted out of England, and then comes to Canada, and now he's just trying to run the country down in the ground. Now, Carney has a history with First Nations. And Carney's father was very racist. And I just want to say thank you to Mario the North for this video I'm going to play, because it's important to shed light on the reality of the Carney family and how racist they truly are. And then they call the rest of the country racist and misogynist, right? Like that's the whole point here. You're going to call everybody else that and historically guilt shame us, and to say that Canada, whatever, your family are straight up racists. So I'm going to play that video.
At the teachers conference not long ago, you told about a program you have working at the Joseph B. Tyrrell School in Fort Smith for culturally retarded children. First of all, would you define a culturally retarded child for me?
A culturally retarded child in the context of the Northwest Territories is a child from a native background who for various reasons has not been in regular attendance in school. He's from a language background other than English, and who is behind in school, say 3 or 4 years. In many centers in southern Canada, the subculture groups, say in a working class area of a large city, you would have children who you would call culturally retarded. Certainly in the United States, in the large cities, and particularly in the eastern United States, among Negro groups, we have many try and upgrade their skills and bring them into contact with the dominant culture.
Could you?
I think we've heard enough. That is Mark Carney's father. He worked at a school for Indigenous children. Just thought you should know that.
And to add to that, I know some folks in Northwest Territories, families that were affected by Mark Carney's family in terms of residential schools, the mistreatment of Northwest Territory First Nations individuals, tribal people of the land, and what he did to their children. So, I mean, you know, when we look at the dark history of some of the residential school, it's not all. Remember, we have incidents. Like, we had so many residential schools across the country. And what the government of Canada has done in the last 10 years is basically utilized incidents, which, you know, and they're propagating that as a major issue. Now, I'm just going to say this is also because my family, my dad and his brothers were put into these schools. And, you know, when I hear family members tell me a whole different side of it, saying that they liked going to school, they and, you know, they liked playing hockey, they liked the sports, they liked learning, and that was the one thing they really did like doing. And they tell me there wasn't abuse there, you know, like, yes, if they were out of line, they'd get in shit or get in trouble and disciplined, but it's not to the extent that the Canadian government has propagated with this new wave of misinformation. On top of that, what the Canadian government did with the NDP is they started getting these ground penetrating radar tests done and looking for bodies in the ground, and then they'd say, oh, look, there's anomalies here, and those are bodies, right? But they won't dig. But I think a couple of First Nations territories. So Pine Creek First Nations actually went out and consulted their band members, and they had a ceremonial powwow where they endorsed the chief and the band to dig, and they found 0 bodies. What they found was old ceremonial animal bones from ceremonies and stuff from back in the day, and that's all they found. And then in some areas, they found nothing. It was just rocks. So right now, you know, we're spending hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars into this campaign to guilt shame Canadians into submission, to believe a lie. And there's 0 bodies yet to be found. And then on top of that, this is another kicker. So the First Nations here in Alberta are demanding hundreds of millions of dollars because they're saying they potentially found unmarked graves. And again, it's ground penetrating radar with no actual results. And I'm just going to say this: ground penetrating radar does not find bodies. They find anomalies in the ground. So you could have like, I don't know, an old septic system that's been there a long time ago when it was first built, could have been run down, destroyed, and just, you know, over time just degraded in the ground. And now ground penetrating radar can go over and they'll see an anomaly there. And then next thing you know, we're propagating graves when it's not even graves. So I just don't like how the lie's been pushed out, and to think that the federal government, they're also guilty of it. So remember, if anything, the Canadian government is the real problem. And we'll go back a little bit of history. So when the Crown came to the land, okay, before Hudson's Bay was purchased and all this stuff happened with Rupert's Land, the Crown came to Acadia on the East Coast and tried to eradicate the Beotucks, the Mi'kmaq, the Iroquois. There was a huge, they conducted war, and they expelled all the Acadians from the East Coast, and all those Acadians ended up moving into the Louisiana states, which is the Cajun states in the US. Now, some of my family were spread out because my family came to this land in 1496. We're from Basque, and we integrated with the First Nations tribal people of the land. They weren't even called First Nations back then. They were tribes. And the Beothuk tribe and the Mi'kmaq tribes were the dominant tribes on the East Coast at the time. My family intermixed, we married, 149 years of peace. Nobody was encroaching on lands. Everybody was peace. There was no war. There was none of this stuff that the Canadian government tries to propagate, that settlers are colonizers and all this stuff. That's actually a lie. It was the Crown. It was the Crown that came in and did that. And ever since that, we had Rupert, who was part of another kingdom, okay? And there was a 30-year war where that individual became, he weaseled his way into the English crown. And then the King of England, gave him the land of Rupert's Land, and that's how that is. And Rupert's Land is actually Czechoslovakian, right? So it's not really Canadian. He wasn't even in English. He wasn't even Canadian. There was no Canada back at the time. So Rupert's Land was basically a migratory path for fur trade and hunting and gathering, and same with resources, and displaced so many. And you have to remember, like, these people came to the land and just did whatever. And then on top of that, you have tribes like the Blackfoot and the Cree, who, and the same thing with the Iroquois and Six Nations, who sided with the Crown to eradicate other tribes. So you want to talk about the real history. I mean, read up on the Beaver Wars. That's one thing I refer people to show you, exactly what the history was. Here in was it Lethbridge and Red Deer area, there was a war there a long time ago with the Blackfoot and the Cree, which was endorsed by the Canadian government and allied with so they can eradicate another tribe. But they don't talk about their history and their crimes. They'll just guilt shame and say, oh, you're white, you're a colonizer, and you're a settler, you took our lands, and this is land back, and this and that, when that's not even true, right? So we need to, like, I swear, like, Canadians either got disconnected to the reality of our real history and they distorted it along the way, and now it's propagated to some narrative that's just not true, right? And now Canadians are being historically guilt shamed. You have the government using First Nations to go after citizens and divide us up, when really the crimes are from the Crown and not from the citizens. And it's just dividing the whole country up. But we want to keep Canada together, right? Makes no sense. So I keep emphasizing on that, the hypocrisy and the oxymoron of this whole messaging by the federal government, by First Nation leaders, distorting the actual facts to fit their narratives for money. Because at the end of the day, it's all about money. All about money. So that's where I'm at with that. It's just unbelievable. Now, I'm also going to show you, like, Carney again. Carney making fun of Daniel Smith, and it's unbelievable.
Yeah, Prime Minister, I'm hoping you can clarify some remarks that you made after the scrum on Monday. When you were leaving the press conference, you spoke with Minister Robertson, and I want to read what you set out. What are you doing? This is stupid. You've got an off-ramp. Take it. That to me sounds like you're talking about Daniel Smith and the Alberta referendum question.
I was talking to Minister Robertson.
But can you clarify what you were discussing in that point in time? Because the scrum was about what the Smith had done.
No, it was about Minister Robertson. Look, I have, I think, if I'm going to take your question about the relationship with Canada and Alberta, Canada and the federal government and the provinces, and we practice cooperative federalism. We work together. What we're focused on is making the federation work. We're doing that with Alberta with respect to a variety of aspects of energy. It's much more than a pipe.
Anyways, I had my mic muted. What I was saying previously to this video was in reference to First Nations and the history of Canada being distorted. And it's a distorted history that they've made up, right? So what I'm going to say is this, so if people didn't hear me, the true history of how Canada became Canada, how the tribes got targeted, and how they utilized the tribe to eradicate other tribes. And then you fast forward to today's history, and they've distorted that history, putting the blame on people who came here from other countries to develop the lands, to create the farms, and then say that the migrants and the immigrants that came here are the ones who eradicated the tribes, when that is not true. You see them, they're like, oh, you're white and you're a colonizer, you land back, this and that. Like, it's unbelievable how we have this narrative being pushed right now. Because I'll tell you, when I was growing up in school, I got taught about the residential schools, and some people forget about that. I never forgot. And the story that we got told about residential schools is not the same as what the narrative is being told today. And even with my family members who were part of that, I had family members that worked for Hudson's Bay. My family came here in 1496. We merged and intermixed and intermarried with the Beatuks and the Mi'kmaq and the tribes of the East Coast. The Crown came in, right? 149 years later, the Crown comes in and just completely eradicates tribes and go to war with the tribal people of the land. And the people of Acadia got expelled into the Louisiana Cajun states. And if you ever go through Louisiana, you'll see that most of those people, they're very proud of their Acadian background. Now, Canada at some point allowed 100,000 Acadians to return to the East Coast. And what they did is we had a Congress. We were set up as New France. And yeah, it's the Canadian government, the Crown, that destroyed all that. They went out and they went on this onslaught after that. And they utilized the tribes to fight against each other. They weaponized other tribes to eradicate other tribes, enslave other tribes, So the whole narrative that we're hearing right now by the government and First Nation is a distorted reality of something that never happened. Yes, there was atrocities that happened, but the way it's being explained to the population is completely not true. So the other thing is, when you're pumping hundreds of millions of dollars into a narrative and saying, oh, there's all these bodies and all these bodies, when there's no bodies that have been produced, and it's all by ground penetrating radar, that's just, it doesn't find bodies, it just finds irregularities in the ground. That's it. So it's just a distorted history. But it's the money that's going behind the messaging, right? So here, when I look at this with First Nations, I say to myself, okay, both First Nations and the government, they're both guilty of this. They're historically guilt shaming regular citizens, okay, for crimes they committed. The Crown, okay, the Crown committed these crimes, not the settlers. And then they've distorted the messaging. It paid off chiefs. Okay, so you have a bunch of corrupt chiefs getting hundreds of millions of dollars to help their reservations. They're not run down, and it's just to historically guilt shame others, and just push this narrative. And now they want to keep Alberta part of Canada. It's funny, when I'm on First Nations territories or even Métis settlements, we all talk about how we want to be no longer part of the Crown, and that's just the people. But then you have these corrupt chiefs that get paid off, and they'll bully their own citizens, they'll bully their own members and their own bands. They use, these forms of organized crime. We all know this. It's corrupt like mad. But look at, in Edmonton, okay, take a ride through Chinatown. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about. We have hundreds of homeless people. Some of them are First Nations. And where's the First Nations folks to get their people off the street and help them reintegrate into society? No. So when you think about every child matters, does every child really matter when their own people are facing the harsh reality of the Crown, right? Because of the Crown's actions on its own citizens, and First Nation not doing a thing about it. So when I hear every child mattered now, I just kind of laugh, because it's like, well, if every child mattered, you'd be out there helping your people. And to think that the provincial government gives millions of dollars to these First Nation non-for-profits here in Edmonton, and only 5% is being used to help their people, and the rest is I got a nice salary, $100,000 a year, right? So you know that it's just corrupt. It's money. It's all about money. So that's what I wanted to emphasize on a little bit today. Is the hypocrisy behind the messaging, and how they're managing our country, and then guilt shaming Canadians, and then turn around and say, we all want to be united Canada. Really, do you? Canada is far from united when you have two provinces talking about separation, three with the people of Saskatchewan, and also Newfoundland. There's folks out there now trying to form a separatist group in Newfoundland, because Newfoundland for years, that's a whole debate of how they became part of Canada. Because when you actually go look, there was a huge resistance in Newfoundland, and they manipulated Newfoundland to become part of the Dominion of Canada. It's the same thing with Alberta, 1904, 1905. If you go back and look at some of the history of that, you'll see that it was a manipulation by the Dominion of Canada to force Alberta to be part of their conscriptural nonsense of evil. And that's really the truth. And for since then, Alberta's been basically, targeted by the federal government consistently, treating us like second-class citizens within the country, draining the Alberta revenue to transfer all the money over to the Laurentian elites, to basically bankroll Ontario and Quebec, and that's the truth, right? So is Canada really united? Not a chance, not even a chance, man. Especially when you are allowing the federal government, Canadians sit back and, oh, we're so united, but if you're so united, wouldn't you care about your own citizens? Like, if I was to say to myself right now, I'm a Canadian patriot, okay, just hypothetical, and go back to what I used to believe in, because I used to believe in Canada. I used to love my country. I was proud flying the Canadian flag. I was proud being Canadian, up until 2020, when Canada took a role to lock us down, then turn around and chastise those who ask questions, and even to restrict their ability to move around the country. And then, and then when we were losing our shirts, like people like me who lost my restaurant, lost my home, and, we ended up living on the streets for a couple months because of the lockdowns. The government didn't do nothing. The government doubled down on the narrative and then turned around and called people like me, oh, we're misogynists and we're racists and we're all these, you know what I mean? That's what the government did to continue their narrative and force the lockdowns. So you look at that and you say, well, holy geez, man, like my country's against me. And then while they're calling us names, they're flooding the country from 2020, okay, to present. They flooded our country with one other country, India. So now everywhere you go, it's all you see is people from another country. You don't see Canadians. You don't even see the multiculturalism of Canada, which we were proud of before, because we had a responsible immigration policy before, which I did agree with. Yes, we need to bring people into, cater to some of the industries that's necessary, farming and agriculture or whatever. But we were doing it responsibly. And while we were doing it responsibly, you've seen a responsible management of communities. Okay, so every city, major city would have like little Italy, little Portugal, little this, little that, little Chinatown, right? And we all had our own, and it's fine. Everybody was okay with that. But now it's not even that. Everywhere you go, it's India they have all the jobs. They're getting all the houses. They're getting all our franchises. They have the fast food industry under lockdown. They have the gas stations under lockdown. They have Walmart under lockdown. They have the grocery stores under lockdown. Everything is for them, right? What about us? So then you see the ripple effect of it, where our kids traditionally in Canada, where our kids, like even when I was a teenager, I could get a job anywhere. I can get a job pumping gas. I can get a job at a restaurant. I can get a job anywhere, carnival, summer jobs anywhere, parks, everything. We could get jobs for our kids and even for ourselves as we were growing up. And now our kids can't get nothing. Our kids are unemployed. Our kids are not learning we're not able to teach them some life skills in terms of responsibility and financial management and growth, because we have one country dominating our own, right? And then the government, when Canadians are saying, hey, whoa there, and it's not even just Canadians anymore, it's other people from other countries who've come here 20 years ago, even up to 10 years ago, established a future for their families here in Canada. They conformed to our collective. They participated and contributed to the Canadian collective, and they're upset that the Canadian government prioritizes one ethnicity, which is India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. And that's exactly what you're seeing. That's exactly what you're seeing. Now, on top of that, when it comes to, let's say, people from the Middle East, even how many Christian churches have burnt down, and then you just ratio that with how many mosques have been built and temples, right? I'm just saying. So when you look at this, it gives you the sense that, hey, man, we're being replaced, right? It's a recolonization of the collective to pander to a vote. Now, when you look at the politicians, they're pandering for votes, right? You got Andrew Knack, even the Premier of Alberta, pandering to votes, and it's every politician. They're all pandering because they know that the Canadian collective are not voting because we've lost faith in our leaders because they're not doing their job properly. That's what's happening. So what do? Well, let's look over at immigration, flood the country with new voters, and too bad. Old stock collective is no more. And that's exactly what Justin Trudeau said in Maclean's magazine in 2017. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now today. So yes, Alberta has every right, just like Quebec, to say we've had enough. We need to nip things in the butt. Daniel Smith has presented 10 referendum questions. And those questions are valid, and I agree with those questions. Now, my stance on Alberta independence, well, I think that we're playing this joke show with the question itself. And I find that we have weak politicians and weak leaders in the system that are not just, they're just pandering all the time. That's it. Pandering. They're not focusing on what the demands of the citizens are. So when I look at, myself, I was a canvasser for Stay Free Alberta, and all of us, we all went out and put time in. I put 6,000 kilometers on a vehicle, driving around Alberta to get signatures from people who couldn't make it out. and even First Nations people on territory. So when you put the effort in, and then we're all expecting to have the question on the ballot, and then you have folks who take a temper tantrum, using the court system to manipulate the process for their own means, making up fictitious lies, and then endorsing public sector unions who, again, public sector unions just last year were out there burning the Canadian flag, chanting death to Canada, death to Israel, death to the United States, endorsing all this foreign issues on our streets. And they were part of that. The same thing with the trans ideology by, people were asking questions, like, these are our kids. We're just simply asking questions, but you ask questions, and the next thing you know, we're transphobic, homophobic, and all this stuff. And we're like, whoa, what are you doing? That's not the truth. And then here you have it today. They're all, we want to be part of Canada, like as if they never did anything wrong. They're the ones who divided the country up. The people who were trying to keep Canada together, they were the ones who ran onslaughts of targeted campaigns against Canadians, calling them names, calling their own Canadian citizen names. And then while they're doing that, they're running this immigration program to force our Canadian citizens onto the streets. And now they want to be part of Canada. They want to keep Canada united. Unbelievable, man. It's such a hypocritical oxymoron I've ever witnessed in my life. So I repeat that because right now in our collective, we have a mental health problem with our citizens as a general population. And I would say that 40% of the general population is confused. They've been misled by the federal government and the mainstream media with the state propaganda from CBC, Global, and CTV, and Czech News, City TV, all these nonsensical media companies that just are paid by the federal government. And they pushed a narrative to divide the country up so that they can run this immigration campaign. And that's really what it boils down to, is a replacement theory program. It is true. So my concern right now for me is I'm focusing on Edmonton. I'm calling out everything that NAC's doing in City Council, along with any politician involved or any level of government that's involved, because we need to fix things. I am tired of screaming at the heavens, just like every other Canadian and Albertan. We're tired of screaming at the heavens and not getting anywhere. We need people who will make the change. We need people who have the ambition to go out and represent the people for the people and address the concerns of all citizens equally. So my thing is, I do intend to run for office for Edmonton. And my thing is, I'm not going to be pushing one-sided political narrative where I'm only going to represent conservatives, because I'm not going to do that. I'm going to represent everybody equally, regardless if you have a left-wing view, you have a right-wing view, you have a center-aligned view. It doesn't matter. You are a citizen who has the right to fair representation from your elected official, regardless what side my opinion leans on. And that's where you have to take yourself out of the scope and say, hey, this is for the people, right? So what I'm looking at right now is saying, okay, I want to hear from Albertans. I want to hear from Edmontonians. And the one concern, I'm hearing stuff about the disability AIS $200 that's been kicked out, and it's causing a strain for our residents. And it's a just reason. So when I look at this and I say, okay, well, here we go. We have people that are on disability. We have people on welfare. Okay. And some people will say, well, the people on welfare, it's not everybody that's, that with that mentality where they're just on it and soaking the system. It's not everybody doing that. Right now, when I look at the system and I say, okay, the cost of living is this. Okay. Somebody loses their job. They can't get EI. They go on welfare. They're getting $850 a month on welfare, and their rent's $1,400. They got to pay groceries still. They got to pay for, you know what I mean? And they're not, and they worked, and now they're on welfare. They don't get no help at all. But if you're a refugee from another country, oh my God, you get a startup, you get your medical care covered 100%, you get a cell phone plan, and the next thing you know, within a couple months, you're driving a brand new car, right? $82,000 investment by the federal and provincial governments to newcomers, but $15,000 to $20,000 investment to our own citizens. Do you think that's fair? No. Now, I do agree that we need to revamp the programs to make sure that, we get people back to work. I'm all for that. So, we need to introduce a program into the municipalities, because municipalities are responsible for delegating the welfare recipient funds to welfare recipients, right? So what I would like to see is, we have all these municipal jobs where we have guys that are working for the city. They're, cleaning parks, mowing the lawn, doing stuff to keep the city beautified. And we're paying these folks $40 an hour, some of them. So I never understood why we couldn't just get welfare recipients with a supervisor or a team with a smaller team and get them working to earn their check. And this way here, like we make it that if they're working full time, they're getting compensated enough through the systems, the socials programs. So this way here, they're able to pay the rent and eat and stuff, but as long as they're working. And then this way here, we can take some overhead off of the municipal stress of the budget, saving us money because the money is coming from the province and we're not utilizing it properly. We're just, it's just a shit show. And on top of that, when you look at the federal funds going into immigration, that's catering to immigrants first and over our own, no wonder we have all our people sitting on the streets. And then disability, well, of course, I agree we need to revamp it and we need to create something that works better for Albertans, especially taxpayers. And I do agree that there are some people that are abusing the system. So what do? We need to audit and then find out where this is happening and then nip it in the butt once and for all. But I don't want to just cut people off. Like if there's people capable of working and they absolutely can't get a job because that's the current situation we're living in right now, Canadians and Albertans cannot get jobs because they're being fished out to the refugees first and to the newcomers. They get them all first. Some of them are on subsidies. They're getting $35 an hour to flip coffees at Tim Hortons, while the regular Canadians getting paid a minimum wage at Tim Hortons, right? Do you see what I'm saying? So if we're dumping all this money into the newcomers and stuff, I think we should revamp the system that makes it work for Albertans and get people back to work and use the current infrastructure that we have already to give them the jobs. So cities like Edmonton, like we're hiring all these people to do all these jobs and we're paying them $40 an hour off the city purse. Why can't we get people that, can work that are on disability, get them out there working and make them earn a little bit more so they can cover their difference. Same thing with welfare recipients, get those who can work, get them out there. And then I would even go as far as for those individuals on the system that the problem is that they need retraining and re-education. I'd rather reinvest in my own people to retrain and re-educate my own citizens before we do it for somebody else and put them into these roles that is already established that we can cut off. Let's say we had a work crew here in Edmonton that their job is to go out and clean parks. Okay. All these folks are on the purse of the city and taxpayers. We can eliminate at least 50% of those funds and redirect a program for people that are on social assistance and disability to work and earn. So we already have the money established from the province and we can just adjust it so they earn enough so they can live for now until we fix the issue. Like there's so many things we can do to rectify so many different problems that it's affecting our citizens, especially in terms of funding and mismanagement of funds. So it's just, we need to work at this. Now, the thing with the $200 AIS, I'm with everybody because like I know some individuals who had $200 deducted off their monthly and now they're going to be homeless and nobody is lifting a finger to help them. But if I tell people, why don't you try to claim refugee status? You probably get help, right? Because that's just basically what it is. Right? We're getting prioritized. So that's a big problem for me and for a lot of people in Canada. And we need to fix that. So, it blows my mind that we have such inconsistencies within our government. It's absolutely insane. I also want to put up this video. This is a Bloc Québécois, or Parti Québécois, about the 50+1 in Mark Carney. And, Mark Carney is playing this game where, Alberta gets a different set of rules of Quebec, right? And it's unbelievable. I'm going to play this video.
I don't think we heard your reaction since Danielle Smith announced that she'll start the process for a future and potential referendum. How do you react about this? What's happening in Alberta?
I'm kind of surprised at what Carney said. Mark Carney seemed to be willing to give many things to Alberta in exchange for some peace. And I think the Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, is just doing her job as a Premier, saying that, of course, they are free to consult their population, and of course, they're a parliament free of making any laws that they deem fit, for their objectives. So for Mark Carney to all of a sudden start saying that it's a bluff. It's dangerous. I think it's really out of line, and I'm not sure where that is heading. But let me make clear that in the case of Quebec, our laws are clear. The history of the two referendums are very clear. We are free to consult our population at any time, and there's no blackmail or any comment that will change that principle. And I'm pretty sure that it's the same reasoning in Alberta right now.
Absolutely. So, Carney and the Liberals and NDP, the public sector unions, the federal unions, these people are all driving the country into the ground, and they think they can just dictate to the rest of us what we can and cannot do, just like they've been doing for the last 10 years with the previous government, with the Trudeau government. We are looking at a dictatorship when you look at the NDP, the Liberals, and the unions that are, basically the bark dogs of the federal government. And they're all state paid. You look at everything that the federal government is investing in, state paid media, public sector workers, all this stuff. They're weaponizing their little army to chastise the rest of the country. But hey, let's stay in Canada, right? Like, it makes no sense. So Quebec is absolutely correct by saying that Alberta, okay, our premier can make decisions for Albertans. And Albertans have the right to vote on a separation matter, and we should separate from Canada to teach Canada and the Confederacy a lesson that you don't own us. And for folks that live in other provinces and that try to think that they have a say in the business of Alberta, you have zero say. You have absolutely zero say. You're born in another province and you have zero say what goes on in Alberta, right? You've taken enough from us. And to emphasize on that, when I say you've been taking from us, well, look at, man, when I worked on the oil sands, okay, my paycheck, 52% went to taxation to the feds, right? 52% of my paycheck I'm losing. So I'm like, what's the point of working? What's the point of anybody working if you're losing half of your pay that's going majority to the feds and then the rest of the province and EI and all this other stuff? It all adds up, right? But the big majority of the chunk of cash goes to the federal government. And then when you do get your paycheck, after taxes and everything, you go buy stuff, you got to pay taxes on everything that you buy. Pay taxes on your food, pay taxes on the gas. The gas goes up, you can't even get back and forth to work, right? Like, it's unbelievable, the lunacy of this fraudulent taxation scam they've pushed on all citizens here in Alberta, because our money gets transferred over to the east and we get little in return. And everybody's like, well, no, you know what it is because if Alberta left, then the East is going to be bankrupt. They won't be able to run their social programs. They won't be able to run their welfare programs. They won't be able to run their money to the feds, to the refugee programs. None of that. That'll get cut off. And then they're going to have to figure out and remanage their funds, remanage their fiscal annual budgets and stuff, because they won't have Alberta's money. And if Alberta was to leave, okay, which I really hope we do separate from the Confederacy, because the Confederacy is an outdated dinosaur. Every time that you watch Parliament on CPAC, it's like two high school kids arguing over lunch money. That's all it is. Nobody gets an answer for anything. It's a mockery. It's a soap opera, and it's dysfunctional. It's an outdated dinosaur. It's not working for the people anymore. And then when the people do have a voice, well, they get shut down by the federal government, right? They're liberals. Oh, no, you're fascists. You're fascists. You know what I mean? Like, that's the response we get. So we have a completely dysfunctional Confederacy that solely works for the East only. Doesn't work for the rest of the country. Doesn't work for the West. It takes from the West to feed the East, and the East just, and that's the reality of it. And when you're weaponizing minority groups and onslaughts of propaganda for the last 10 years, I mean, every day it's something new. Right? Every day there's like 5 things at once going, and sometimes it's hard to keep up, because that's what the federal government and state paid media wants to do. They want to confuse the masses with as much propaganda as possible, and that's what they're doing, right? So that's where I'm at with that. I think we need to expose the federal government for what it is. It's a criminal organization at this point. They're running this eugenics where they're killing our citizens, and they're on the one hand, on one side of the mouth, they're like, oh, we're going to kill all these Canadians, and on the next side, we want to keep Canada together, right? But replace us with other people. It's just unbelievable. And I just want to emphasize on one more thing before I go. Look, I'm not racist at all. People have called me that. What I'm concerned about is the fact that we have an out of control immigration program being abused by India and Bangladesh and Pakistan and other countries, mostly from India of South Asian descent. And you're seeing that. You see Brampton, Ontario. Brampton, Ontario is being overrun. I mean, a whole city, which was once a white collar, blue collar city, Canadians, hardworking Canadians, and it had multiculturalism there. But I mean, you have an entire city that's been taken over by one country. So that's a big concern when you have a city taken over by one country. And then when you go through, if you drive through Ontario, you'll see that it's not just Brampton, it's all the cities. I mean, it's even to the point when you're like, let's say you're leaving Ontario and you're coming out west, okay, and you're going down Highway 11 or Highway 17 and you're stopping in the last little towns of Ontario. I mean, these are towns in the middle of nowhere that have a population of a couple hundred people, and you have people from India that own everything. They own the gas station, they own the store, they jacked up the price rate, doubled the price, everything, and everybody in the town's like, what the hell, right? Nobody's saying nothing about that. And then you look at the rest of the country. Here in Edmonton, I mean, we have a huge population of folks from India, and everywhere you go now, that's what it looks like. You know, like this week, okay, every time I go to Walmart or if I had to go to the grocery store and just buy some bread or whatever, I mean, it's just India. It's India, 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 India. Right? That's all it is. And you're like, what the hell is going on here, man? But more importantly is the crimes that are being committed in Canada right now are all of Indian descent. There's no traditional Canadian name in charges anymore. You see very little of it. I think it's like 1% now of Canadians that are committing crimes and getting caught versus all these crimes that is, Jagpreets, Singhs, Mohammeds and stuff. It's all them. And the crime rate shot up like 500% in just their nationalities alone, with fentanyl, drug dealing, gangs, extortion, arson, auto theft, human trafficking, all this stuff. And just recently, even, I mean, like the arrests in Alberta here in Edmonton for just the prostitution. Right, I'm just saying, it's unbelievable. Now, the other thing too is now we have a problem with these franchises where, we have Canadians going into grocery stores or going into the stores, and all of a sudden these Indians are turning around and recording little kids. And then when the parents confront the security guards or whoever, they all cover up for each other. And I have a video for that because it went viral on my Facebook page, and I'm gonna play that before we go. I want everybody to realize that we have a problem in Canada. And it's not racist to say that we have a problem with how our dynamics have changed in multiculturalism in our country. There's nothing wrong saying that. Don't let them call you racist. And if they do, just ignore it, because you're not. We're concerned citizens that have watched our country be overrun and taken control by another country. That's exactly what's happened. And instead of our politicians standing up and speaking for our citizen, they're pandering them. They're pandering to these people for votes.
So this guy just took pictures of me and my kids as I walked by. With that thing right there. Can't even hold them. We see you. Hi. Why that guy took pictures of me and my kids when we walked in the store?
You cannot show me.
But can you tell me why he took pictures of us?
I cannot talk to you unless you have no permission to show me, and I cannot talk to you. Okay?
This is so unprofessional. Yeah, that is so unprofessional.
Now, that incident happened at the Superstore on Gateway. Okay, so yesterday I went there. I was actually going to go and ask questions. They had no security guard and management was nowhere to be found. So I spoke to some of the cashiers that work there who were Albertans, and they're of Caucasian descent. So I'm going to say that because the two cashiers I spoke to, one was part of the LGBTQ and is a strong supporter of the NDP, and the other one was a regular. She was just a senior citizen working there, and she's from just outside Leduc, and she works here. So I explained to them. I said, "Hey, did you guys know that your store is going viral on Facebook?" And they were like, "No." And I explained to them that the security guard's been recording little kids. And they were confronted about it, and management, oh, we're not going to say anything because you're recording me, but it's okay for your security guard to record my kid, right? You know what I mean? Like that kind of mentality is just absolutely absurd. Well, it changed the opinions of those two left-leaning individuals, and they were absolutely shocked. And the one girl said she's probably going to quit her job if nothing happens about this, because this is something that is crossing the line, and this is a common occurrence. Like these people come into our country. I mean, they're pooping on our beaches, not caring at all. It's just, taking over everything, just total disrespect. I mean, you get phone calls, right? And who is it? Hey, thank you. You're going to jail. You need to pay money. You need to pay money. Go to Bitcoin machine. Oh, no, you don't. And yes, ma'am, we're going to arrest you. And it's just scam calls from India all the time, right? Like they don't have any respect for us. So, if I was the Prime Minister of Canada, I'd be giving them all the boot. Get the hell out. Bye-bye. You can't respect our Canadian citizens. You can't respect our collective. You can't get the hell out. Deport. Set up our own Canadian ICE division to get them out of here. But that will never happen, right? They will never happen. And there's nothing wrong with saying that, because Canada was supposed to be our country, where our families have come here. We all collectively work together to build a strong nation. And it's been teetering on a fractured foundation ever since the beginning of the Dominion of Canada. Because that's the truth. The Dominion of Canada, when it was formed, was a fractured relationship between everybody involved. And it was just because the Ottawa had the Royal Canadian Mounted Police as basically their army to enforce, like the Gestapos of Nazi Germany. That's what Canada did. They used the RCMP to basically threaten and manipulate the collective into conforming into the Dominion of Canada. I mean, you can go look at the real history of Alberta. Okay, Albertans who made this country, who built Alberta, are not even from the east. Most of them are from the Montana Strait, the Wyoming migratory path, and then we had people come over from the west into from BC and from the Northwest Territories and from the tribes that were already here. Okay, the French did not come to Alberta because we would have a huge Francophone community, but no, it's mostly American. So. And this is all people that were leaving and fleeing civil wars and stuff that was going on in the States that fled north. And that's a history that people need to understand, the true history of Alberta, right? And how Alberta became part of the Dominion in Canada is also controversial at the best. So when you look at the Dominion of Canada and you look at Canada itself, it's just an authoritarian country, authoritarian regime that just... they will replace you, kill you, murder you, hijack whatever you're doing at a given time, or trample you if you open up your mouth. I mean, that was a prime example of what they did in Ottawa during 2022's protest for the Freedom Convoy. Regardless of people who agree with it or not, Canadians had the right to go and exercise and freely assemble and protest. And the reason why that we stayed was because the government refused to listen to us. Even before the convoy hit Ottawa, every one of us, we emailed and we called, we sent letters, we did everything. And not one politician, not even a federal conservative, responded to any one of us on our concerns about those of us losing our businesses, those of us losing our homes, those of us, losing everything that we saved up and worked hard for, just up in smoke. And not one MP was there to help us, not one MPP, not one MP. The only people that were out there were the people who got kicked out of government, like Randy Hillier, Derek Sloan, Roman Baber, even Maxime Bernier. They were out there trying to speak for the people. And it was only until the convoy started that the federal conservatives came over and said, and they wanted, because they were losing support all of a sudden, and they wanted to get support base because they knew that it was the biggest drive in Canadian history. So they tried to, in my opinion, I find that the Conservatives tried to hijack the convoy. I was part of it. I helped organize the Ontario wing, and I was part of Canada Unity, and I seen a lot of infiltration happen. So I'm not going to get into that, but a lot of it was government. And then here we are today. We have the government, propping off and springboarding off the convoy, and the next thing you know, they're turning their backs on us again because we pandered to the international voters. Anyways, that's the state of Canada right now. It's a shit show, circus clown, carny event of leaders who are completely out of touch. We have too many foreigners as politicians that are coming and manipulating our political electorates. And I think that we should have a rule in this country that you have to be a natural born Canadian citizen in order to be part of government. I don't think it's wise that we have foreign influence from people from other countries to run the process and the electorates. That's just my opinion, right? And people will say, well, that's not, well, you know what? Look at what's happening to the country right now because of that. Just think about that for a second. How many MPs are not even from Canada? They're born somewhere else. They have ties to terrorism. And lastly, the Canadian government, they say there's so much for Canadians. Remember, they don't want to help our Canadian veterans in any way, but they'll fund terrorists. They'll give $10 million to Omar Khadr, who owns a mini mall here in Edmonton, so people know that. They will fund all these terrorist groups with activism and burn the Canadian flag in the streets, chanting death to Canada, and cooperation with a known terrorist group called Samidoun. And that's the public sector unions that are involved, CUPE and the KZIC and all of them. They're all part of that. But they want to keep Canada together after they burned our flag, put more Canadians on the streets, watched our Canadians die of overdoses, amputating our senior citizens and throwing them back in the streets with no housing, no nothing. Yeah, that's real Canadian to me, eh? Just saying. Anyways, that's all I got to say for the show today. Leave you off with a really cool track that I put together. And yeah, I hope we win, man. I hope we win this fight. And I just want to say thank you to all the social media content creators that are going out and exposing the truth, especially Jesse Ferrieg. I really admire Jesse, what he's doing. And it's making me go out and do some stuff more frequently to get the message out and offer solutions to Edmontonians to think about when the next municipal election happens. So I'll leave you guys with this, and much love and God bless Alberta.
Yeah. Elbows down, ass up. Say it loud, never back up. Elbows down, yeah, elbows down, ass up. Dress as clowns, acting tough. Talking big with your mask up. Keyboard freaks never match us. Elbows down, ass up. All your problems, you blame Trump. Doxed us online with your bullshit. Chasing keys with queens, fucking pedo shit. You quote books you never read past page 2. Copy paste text, call it a peer review. Marching in the streets for your fake coup. You cosplay terrorists in the rainbow crew. You cry for equal rights, but it's just for you. Burning our national flag, you fuck you too. Your protests are funded by globalists, only to sympathize with terrorists. Now hating the people with the giddy up crew, always foreign issues, they don't care about you. Yeah, elbows down, ass up. Dressed as clowns, acting tough. Talking beat with your mask up. Keyboard freaks never match us. Yeah, elbows down, ass up. All your problems, you blame Trump. Doxed us online with your bullshit. Chasing kids with queens, fucking pedo shit. You want plans where the math don't add up. Promising free drugs while the bodies pile up. Dressed to state with they offer maize while sending the billions off to Ukraine. You so love that greed while everyone tense up. Freezing in the cold, waiting to amputate up. You say love wins, yeah, you spit your twist. If anyone doubts you, we're all fascists. The brainwashed minds by the liberal lies. What will it take to awaken your minds? Yeah. Elbows down, ass up. Dressed as clowns, acting tough. Talking big with your mask up. Keyboard freaks never match us. Yeah. Elbows down, ass up. All your problems, you blame Trump. Doxed us online with your bullshit. Chasing kids with queens, fucking pedo shit. Hands out, down out. Big plans, small crowd. You want the crown, skip the climb. What now when the lights go down? You just log out. Elbows down, ass up. Dressed as clowns, acting tough. Talking big with your mask up. Keyboard freaks never match us. Elbows down, ass up. All your problems, you blame Trump. Doxed us online with your bullshit. Chasing kids with queens, fucking pedo shit.
Druthers is Canada's largest, most loved, independent, people-powered newspaper. Now with over 8.5 million copies printed and distributed coast to coast by concerned Canadians like you. Please, Donate, subscribe, volunteer, get involved. Together we can save this country. If you stand for freedom, go to www.druthers.net.